Welcome back to another episode of the Medical Innovation Podcast. We're still here at Health. Actually, the last day we just interviewed our last guest and just wanted to record some thoughts about our very first health conference. So, part of what you think?
Was our first time here. It was did not know what to expect, honestly, but it was incredible. We got to have a lot of great conversations on the podcast. We met a lot of interesting people that may have never met otherwise who are building really cool things or involved in really cool initiatives across, either as physicians or non-physicians. But overall, it's been, a great experience and would definitely want to come back in the future.
Yeah, as much as I hate Vegas, I mean, this is a cool conference. Like, this is, I feel like, I've been to a lot of these academic medical conferences, but this one is just, it's like someone said it was Coachella for medicine, and I'm like, I've never been to Coachella, but I feel like that could be a good way to summarize it. I
Yeah.
think I think it's been nice too, like, doing podcasts because we're able to get, like, a deeper understanding of some of our guests. Were there any in particular, like, conversation-wise that you thought were, like, you really, really enjoyed?
Yeah, I think we had a ton of great conversations, first of all. So, um, huge thank you to all the guests who joined us. But I think a couple of my favorites would have to be one, Rat AI. I've been trying to get them on the podcast for a while now, so
Oh,
I'm
no.
glad it worked out. They actually reached out to us in this instance.
Yeah.
So it's really cool to be able to understand the work they're doing. Because we've spoken to some other radiology focused, for example, Vista AI, who's doing more automatic MRI imaging.
Yeah.
But this was Rat AI is doing more the workflow around radiologists, trying to not replace the analysis they do, but the more menial tedious tasks like documentation or communicating those results to other providers. So it's really cool to be able to connect with Rat AI's Dimitri, this chief information officer.
Yeah. Yeah, he was a really great guest, and I think that that also brings up a good point because some of his background is really interesting too, like, he spent a lot of time at Nuance, which, like, when you think about the
That was
original
a
project.
theme too. We had
Right.
like three different people who had histories at Nuance this
Right,
weekend.
and it's like that was the standard of radiology practice, PowerScribe, their technology that even to this day, most radiologists or a lot of radiologists use in order to chart, and I think we saw this theme of like, "Oh, this person knows this person, they both worked at this company at some point together," and while, at this conference, it's like, there's so many people here, a lot of these people are, like, connected in many ways where, like, they maybe worked at the same company at some point and spinned off their own thing, and I feel like being in the academic setting for so long, like being at UNC, it's like you get into those like academic circles and not much exposure into like these circles, but it's interesting to see this. Like now we see like, okay, who are those people that are innovating and what did those circles look like? And now we're kind of in those circles.
Another interesting guest was Canary Speech,
Yeah.
uh, because first of all, I'd never even heard of it until a few months ago, but the idea of using voice biomarkers to detect depression or anxiety or even Alzheimer's or Parkinson's is something that's really incredible and could really just revolutionize how, preventative care is done. But the best part about that was hearing about his partner, Jeff, who he said worked at the NSA and then
Yeah.
worked at, uh,
Nuance
worked on
Laboratory, right?
Nuance. He worked on the Alexa, Amazon, Siri, one of the original voice agents.
Yeah.
So it's really cool to see how all those, different experiences, different sort of early voice agents have led to this incredible medical innovation.
Yeah. And it's always interesting to look at the different aspects of business you can focus on, right? With Canary, it's really interesting where you're taking this data set that's like that it's voice. Like you
Yeah.
can generate as much voice as you want, and it's a very easy set of data to obtain, but in order to actually extract meaningful information requires a lot of work, obviously. But once you establish that work, then you can do it at scale pretty easily. And it's like that concept of scale too, whether it's Canary. I mean, Canary was interesting because they're building this. They talked about it as like a platform where they're building this analysis, a way to analyze voice, and then working with multiple research groups to explore specific disease states. So recognizing, okay, like we're really good at building this platform. We can do some introductory work into the particular domains, but there are researchers at these places that can do that at way better scale. And then there are other companies too. We just talked to First Ascent Biomedical, who's
Yeah.
building a platform for precision medicine and oncology, functional precision medicine, which is a huge field now. And they're talking about how they can use their platform now to enable um, enabled innovation within drug development as well. And so, like using that technology. So, I think scale has been a pretty cool aspect of a lot of these
Yeah.
businesses that we're talking about too.
I think In addition to the scale, also just the idea of being able to intervene earlier, whether it's canary or first
Yeah,
ascension. Like for first ascension, you can use the targeted therapy that's gonna be most likely to succeed instead of trying, the standard cocktail of
yeah,
different agents, and what waiting for them to succeed or fail, then trying something else. So the idea of just being able to have more precise early intervention is something that's really cool and will make a huge impact
yeah.
on patients in general.
Yeah, and I think that there's a safety aspect of all this too. Like each company we talked to, I mean, almost each one had mentioned AI in some
Yeah.
capacity, but I think maybe a year ago or so, it was much more like smoke and mirrors, like not knowing what actually the integration was. But I think from the conversations we've had, there's a lot more awareness of how to implement it smart. We talked to Kai AI just recently, who is building therapy, like using AI, but it's while they have the AI that's able to do the therapy 24/7, it's all under the guise of, well, first you have to have a clinical psychologist under which the patient is working with. And then within that, Kai also has a clinical team of real people that are able to review the chat whenever things are spotted. And then they also um, ways of fine tuning their model to avoid some of the activity that baseline chat GPT has avoided. So there's a lot more intentionality with the AI tools that are making where I think like maybe a year ago, those companies hadn't been weeded out yet. Like I think there's been a process of like, okay, if you made it this far, especially at health and like raising however much money you have, you've already thought of like, okay, what's the actual what's AI? What does smart integration of AI look like?
So it's also interesting how, in a way, almost every company we talk to is hedging somehow. Like, for example, First Ascension, they don't tell physicians to use this therapy, they just tell you the data.
Yeah,
They inform the providers who are still at the end of the day making a final decision. Or Kai AI, they're not telling you to, take this prescription medication or, alter your therapy. It's more so acting as a adjacent or an addition to the clinical care you should be receiving on the side.
yeah,
Even WellDoc, like, they have FDA approval, but
yeah.
still, they're not telling you how to manage your medication or your diabetes or anything like that. They're just providing information to the patient and to the provider so that they can make the most informed decisions themselves.
Yeah, and I think that's a really good point in medicine in particular. I think in a lot of other industries, you can skew data very easily and make it sound really flowery and fancy. But when you're publishing peer-reviewed articles, you can't skew the data. Like, there's an independent body that reviews your data and makes sure that it's valid. Of course, I mean, if it's sponsored by the people that are making it, maybe there's some influence there, but ultimately, there's an external force that's making sure that what you're doing is valid, and I think that was an approach that we took during our shooting too at health is we talked a lot to a lot of people that are building in therapeutics, building in prevention. We talked to Delphi um, that's doing lung cancer screening, and just increasing the availability of early stage screening, and in doing that, also published multiple papers on how their platform performs. We talked to Parabolis, who is using a novel protein structure and using AI to discover drugs in a much more efficient manner and taking candidate drugs to clinical trials, have initial clinical trial data, and being able to publish that where they do. And us, I gain a little bit more understanding, like, okay, us coming from a clinical background, why is that important? Well, because we can look at these and vet out like, okay, this is a company that's thinking about drug discovery, but they haven't even validated any drug. They haven't run it through any trials. There's no data to look at versus when there is data, we can like actually go through it and explain that at a level where it shares like what the legitimacy of it is.
Yeah, definitely. We also talked to, Microsoft, so many cool companies that are working on very different things, but a lot of them are using AI in really meaningful ways. But also don't want to give away too much about our episode. We're
True,
listener
true.
to it. So what was your favorite part besides the podcast recordings of the conference?
Yeah, I think I don't want to steal what someone else said, but we have been interfacing a lot with people virtually. All our interviews so far have been Zoom, and then even, both of us are very plugged into the innovation spot. We're always networking with people, but again, it's all virtual, and oftentimes I can feel transactional. You're really like going into a Zoom meeting, whether it's 30 minutes or 15 minutes, with a goal of like what your ask is. Versus here, it's like you're meeting up in person. You're seeing those people that like we've interact with virtually, and now we're like friends in a way, you know? And so like these some people like Dr. Graham Walker has been someone that we've worked with, like we've had on the podcast, has worked with our organization MD Plus a bunch in the past. Jake Horowitz as well from Off Call, and these are people that we've met virtually and had good vibes with, but like meeting them in person, hanging out with them is like a different energy. Like Yair Saperstein, from Avo, like these people that are we've been talking to for a while, but been able to meet in person. It's nice because I think when you're innovating and feel like you're in isolation in whatever you're building, or you want to build something, but you're like, oh, there's no one doing it, or it's really hard. You have these people that now are not just like business contacts, but like kind of friends in that way that will advise you on whatever you're building, give you feedback, and do it in a way that's like in a mentorship type of way. So, like, I think those deeper connections, like, I mean, this is what Graham said also, like these deeper connections that you have with people, I feel like you don't get with virtual only conversations. And you bring out when you're actually in person doing things.
Yeah, it was really great to meet all these people we look up to and, like,
Yeah.
admire so much, and we've had them on the podcast, we've met them in different ways, so it's really cool to be able to speak to them in person. Like you said, develop a relationship beyond just, superficial podcast hour-long episodes.
Yeah.
That was really cool, but also just all the physician-oriented events were really
Sure.
interesting.
Yeah.
Like, to Nishat Mehta's point, who runs Physician Side Gig, she was saying that there's a larger and larger presence of physicians at health,
Yep.
which I think is really important because physicians are also taking a larger role in developing their own companies or
Yeah.
applications or providing input to these health tech initiatives across the whole industry. So it was really cool to be able to meet such interesting physicians from there were a lot of emergency medicine doctors,
Oh,
obviously,
yeah.
but also we met some Australian infectious disease doctors.
Yeah.
We met, psychiatrists. We met so many different people who are all coming together to try to solve challenging problems and just rethink how care is delivered to patients, whether it's mental health, infectious disease, emergency, or just even internal medicine or oncology. So
Yeah.
that was also really interesting to hear the different perspectives and
Yeah.
build these relationships we may never gotten otherwise.
Yeah, yeah, I think that's a really good point, and, I think we realize this midway is on our badges, we have medical innovation podcasts with no other context. It's like, are these guys just like media, like, they don't really know anything clinically, and oftentimes we walk up to booths and people wouldn't take us seriously or, like, have to, like, explain things in a very simple way, and then we got the buttons that said physician on them, put them on our lanyards, and people would, like, when we go to booths, and I was like, "Oh, you're a physician, you get it," and, like, would it's just a different I mean, ultimately, that's what you're building for, right? A lot of these guests that we had, a lot of people we've talked to are building tools for clinicians to use in patient care. So obviously, you'd want that kind of um, presence here. So I'm glad it's evolved into that, and I think it'll only continue to grow. You have like physician side gigs and other organizations promoting that.
Huge thanks to Abridge and Open Evidence
Yeah,
for Physician Side Geeks for sponsoring so many
yeah,
physician-oriented events, getting everyone into one room so you can actually meet them because it's a huge conference, there's thousands of people here,
yeah,
so it's really hard to find the people that you wanna talk to without these curated events.
yeah. And it's like this common theme of like you know we were in med school or at least rotations at different points, and I can imagine when you were on rotations, there are probably things you saw in the hospital. You're like, why is it done this way? Like this is so stupid. Like this is such an easy fix. Why can't we fix it and make our lives so much easier? Which is, I think, a lot of people in medicine, obviously inundated with how much work there is and how many other priorities there are just kind of like, okay, it's a problem. Like, let's move on. And I think I went through rotations, felt the same way, both at different times, but kind of isolated in that feeling. And then you come to a conference like this and you ask any of these physician founders why they built it. And it's the same sense of like, man, I just really hated how things like happened in the hospital, and I really wanted to do something, so they did it. But then also realize the importance in like having that clinical background. So it's like you find when people are always talking about like you got to find your people, and I feel like a conference like this, like, I feel like we found our people that are further along than us, which
Yeah.
is also nice because then you can use them as like as mentors and learn from them.
Also, like we were discussing yesterday with the founder of Skin Check, there's a lack of younger people at this
Oh
conference,
yeah,
especially among physicians.
yeah,
I think like outside of us, the youngest physician I met was I think one who had just finished residency. So
yeah,
he was, probably late 20s, early 30s.
yeah,
So it'd be really great to have a bigger presence of earlier stage, whether it's medical students or earlier residents or just early stage or attendings who have maybe a different mindset than the more experienced physicians like, Graham Walker, who's been in the industry for so long. It'd just be great to have some more fresh perspectives and
yeah.
understand what they're working on, what they're interested in as well.
Yeah, yeah, that clinical I think that's probably biggest critique of health is what like, I think it's getting better, but, like, I don't think there was any inclination of if you're an MD, if you're clinical, like, put like, that needs to go on your badge. Like,
Yeah.
there's no, like there was no like, for media, we had, like, a special M on our badge. There was nothing for physicians or clinicians where I mean, this is what we were doing, right? Like, walking around in the hallways, like, seeing people looking at people's badges. I mean, everyone was doing that, looking
Yeah.
at the badge to see, like, what important people, like, you can meet. I think if you have that, then you, like especially when you're building a product, you wanna go to the user, and I feel like that's a better way than you can utilize, and then if you're a physician, then you can note that from other people that are also there.
Yeah. It's also surreal to talk to all these companies that, I've read a lot about.
Yeah.
Verily, for example,
Yeah.
like, I've been following them for a long time. They were part of Google X originally, spun out. They're developing really cool work. They've shifted gears a bunch of times.
Yeah.
We've reached out, cold emailed, cold LinkedIn, trying to get them on the podcast before, but unfortunately never heard back. So being able to talk to them in person, record a Instagram reel with them,
Yeah.
short form content with them, and start developing that relationship so we can hopefully have them on the podcast one day, have deeper stories. And it
Yeah.
wasn't just Verily, it was, we talked to Samsung Health, we talked to
Yeah.
Google for Health, who we have talked to Justin Chen before, but being able to see the
Yeah.
platform up in person, getting a demo for Microsoft's Copilot was really cool as well. So
Yeah.
just being able to talk to all these companies that we've read a lot about, heard a lot
Yeah.
about, but seeing the products in person, talking to representatives.
Yeah. Yeah, it breaks the barriers of, like, someone having to read your email and go through things. I mean, guys, Pranav shook Mark Cuban's hand. Like, Mark Cuban, like, wouldn't probably not just, like, respond to your email, but,
No,
like,
I've
you
tried
yeah.
emailing him like 5 times.
Yeah, exactly. So you, like, will run into him when he's at this conference, and you can just, like, bombard like, if you wanted to not like, that's I think that's what we realized too is, like, you can do whatever you want. Like, we're in a media there's, like, a media village for the podcast downstairs.
We were among, like, the Washington Post, New York Times, these, like,
Yeah.
legacy respected
Yeah.
institutions.
So here we are with our podcast we started a year ago. That's our baby, but, like, we're like, "Okay, we're not recording here, there's no space." So then we explored and then, like, built our own, like, little podcast studio in the corner of the conference that no one knows about, and every single guest has been like, "Yeah, this is the best place that I've recorded, while I've been here." So,
Yeah.
I mean, he's just like I feel like, we're just kind of doing the thing, and, like, it's been fun. It's been great, but it has been exhausting. Like, I don't remember the last time I've been on for so long.
It's mentally draining for sure,
Yeah,
but it's crazy to think about how far this podcast, this initiative has come in the
yeah,
past year. Like, I think we discussed this before, we started it because we are both passionate about innovation in healthcare,
yeah,
specifically healthcare AI. We were always sharing stories, articles, etcetera, and we just thought, "Let's start a podcast,
yeah,
let's have interesting conversations, meet cool people," and we started off just doing mostly on Zoom,
yeah,
reaching out to the people we knew or had, second connections with, shifted to cold outreach, trying to get interesting people who are building cool things on our podcast. And now when we sign up for this conference, like, never would have imagined that we would get media passes to one
yeah,
of the biggest healthcare conferences and have dozens of companies reaching out to us. Like, Microsoft reached out to us,
yeah,
which is insane.
yeah,
I
it's
never would have
crazy.
predicted that.
Yeah,
And we unfortunately had to turn a lot of people down
yeah,
because we had so much interest. And we'll obviously reach out to them afterwards and
yeah,
connect at some point. But just the ability to start from scratch, start from nothing is we're both medical students back then when we first started, and
yeah,
being able to build something from the ground up has been incredible, and who knows where we'll be next year. I joke that we'll hopefully fly in
yeah,
on a private jet next year
yeah.
like the Off Call and Scrub Capital team did.
Yeah, yeah, we'll get our own PJ funded by the the Medical Innovation Podcast. No, yeah, like, it's been I think, yeah, just in a year that I think this has been a huge, like, validating moment, right? It's like, we have content for the next 6 months minimum, right? And then that doesn't even leave out the people that like, we have at least, like, 50, like, messages that we haven't responded to in terms of companies that we wanna interview that are all doing cool things, but it's like, you can only do so much, but initially, I remember we were like, "Dang, like, who are we gonna have for a guest?" And now it's like, who do we pick to have on the podcast?
Yeah.
So, I think that's a combination of, like, getting legitimacy, combination of us also having and recognizing our own, like, what we're bringing to the podcast, right? Like, from a clinical background, that's also innovation focused, and, yeah, I'm also excited, like, we're definitely coming to health next year. Well,
Like,
I mean, if
we
we let it
learned a lot about how to, like,
yeah,
navigate the conference too. Like,
yeah,
I think we're gonna have, fixed slots. We were
oh,
running
yeah,
around a lot trying to navigate the podcast
yeah,
recording, the short form content, meeting the people we wanted to meet, exploring the booths. So just having a little bit more experience next time will make a huge difference
yeah.
as well, and we'll be a lot more prepared.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah, with the time I left my microphone all the way in the other corner of the conference, like, 5 minutes yeah, man, there's so many, like, stories we have from and things, but it all worked out. Very happy with what we did and what we learned, and I think, I think the connections that we made will serve us well, and, excited to keep building this podcast, man.
We also did video for the first
We
time.
did.
Like, we've been doing Zoom meetings, but only uploading audio. I remember the first 2 episodes we did, just the 2 of us. I was so nervous. We had our first guest too.
Yeah.
It was nerve-wracking, like, didn't know what I was saying, how to ask
Oh,
questions.
yeah.
Gotten so much more comfortable, and now being able to do videos. We recorded like, short form
Yeah.
content to upload to Reels, TikTok, LinkedIn, so that'll be really cool as well, and hopefully help broaden our audience as well.
Yeah, I agree, like, branching out into things, and I think someone asked us, he's like, "Oh, so, like, you have to meet deadlines? Like, you have to, like, report to someone?" And we're like, "No, we're just doing this based on vibes, like, we enjoy doing it." But then we are, like, now that we're thinking about it, it's just like, now that we have all these high profile guests that are like, "Yeah, this announcement's, like, really relevant now." It's like, "Oh,
Mm,
dang, we need to post these things as, like, publicity and all that." So I think there's the balance of, like, increased pressure with what you're building as it grows bigger, but
mm.
I think just keeping the core of, like, we did this because we wanted to meet cool people, and remembering that's why we're doing it, I think is important, and that's what we'll try to do.
We'll one day have Mark Cuban podcast
We
too.
will.
If
What
Graham can do it, we'll find our way there.
right, what, we're like, what, 2 connections away there? Yeah, we're 2 co I mean, 1 connection now that yeah, we 1 connection give it yeah, exactly, so it will it will come
Mhm.
soon, and I'm sure he'll come and yell about PBMs and our podcast some point too,
No, but
so yeah,
it's been a great experience so far. Looking forward to continue to build this with you and see where we go next year.
for sure, man, for sure, we're gonna
Mm.
keep it going, come back to health next year. Stay tuned, guys, there's gonna be so many podcasts and episodes coming from this, event, and then also just, things that people that we've met at this event that we'll just continue to record for, but, yeah, this is, I think, the next chapter of Medical Innovation Podcast, as we get more guests, as we do video, as we look at different platforms, and we're excited to grow. If you know a conference that needs more podcasting, let us know. Fly
Preferably with free media passes.
yeah, free media passes, fly us out on a PJ if you'd like. That would be nice as well. But yeah, hope you guys are enjoying these episodes. Really excited for you guys to tune into the next few from health and stay tuned.